A 6-year-old boy killed his sister in silence, and no one has ever explained why. That missing motive didn't fade with time. It hardened into the thing every sequel keeps failing to top, no matter how much backstory or blood they pile on top of it. Decades later, one babysitter is still paying for a question nobody can answer. Judith Myers. A 6-year-old boy walks up a flight of stairs holding a kitchen knife, and the camera never blinks. That's the first image of the entire franchise, not a monster in a mask. A child. The scene plays out in one unbroken shot from behind Michael's eyes. You watch him grab the knife off the kitchen counter. You watch him climb the stairs. You watch him pick up a clown mask and put it on, and the second he does, the world narrows to 2 eye holes and heavy breathing. Then you watch him walk into his sister Judith's room and stab her, repeatedly. On Halloween night, October 30th, 1963, in Haddonfield, Illinois, 15-year-old Judith Myers becomes the first human being Michael Myers ever kills on screen, and the camera makes sure it's you holding the knife when he does it. There's no scream from Michael, no monologue, no flashback to some earlier trauma explaining why this particular sister on this particular night. He walks back downstairs, mask still on, and steps outside into the porch light where his parents find him standing over Judith's body, knife still dripping in his 6-year-old hand. He says nothing. He doesn't run. He just stands there, like a kid who's done something and doesn't fully understand what. That absence is the whole point. John Carpenter built this kill with zero motive on purpose, and it's the single most disturbing choice in the entire scene. Judith wasn't cruel to him. She wasn't tormenting him. She was just a teenager who wanted 5 minutes alone with her boyfriend before her parents got home, and that ordinary, forgettable want got her killed by her own brother for no reason the film will ever give you. Later franchise entries tried to retrofit a druidic curse and a family bloodline onto this moment, some Cult of Thorn nonsense about ancient evil picking its vessel. Ignore it. Nothing in this original sequence supports it, and fans have spent decades arguing that any explanation, curse or trauma or otherwise, makes Michael smaller. The silence is the terror. The second you explain him, he's just a guy with a backstory. Michael gets institutionalized at Smith's Grove Sanitarium the same night, and he stays there for 15 years without saying a single word to anyone, not to doctors, not to his own psychiatrist. 15 years of total silence following one act of violence that nobody, including the people paid to study him, could ever attach a reason to. That's the deal. Michael strikes with the audience before he's even old enough to drive. No motive, no mercy, no explanation owed to anyone, not even the people who loved him. It's a debt every version of this franchise since has tried to pay off with lore, and every single one has come up short. But that first kill was raw, almost accidental in its rage. 15 years later, he comes back changed, and the next body proves he didn't just learn to kill again, he learned to pose them. Bob Sims. Michael Myers kills Bob Sims in about 4 seconds and then spends the next 4 minutes admiring it. That gap is the whole point. The stabbing itself is fast, almost boring by slasher standards. One thrust, no struggle, no chase, nothing that would make a highlight reel on its own. What happens after the knife goes in is the part that should actually worry you. Bob walks into the Wallace house a little after 10 on Halloween night looking to meet up with Linda in a bedroom somewhere in that same house. He never even makes it that far. He doesn't get past the kitchen counter. Michael is already inside, already invisible in a house that isn't even his own, and he puts one kitchen knife straight into Bob's chest before Bob has a chance to register that there's someone home waiting for him. That's the surface story. A teenager shows up looking for a hookup on the wrong night in the wrong house at exactly the wrong time. But watch what Michael does with the body once Bob stops moving, and the whole story changes shape. He doesn't drop Bob on the floor. He doesn't drag him off somewhere out of sight the way you'd expect from someone trying to hide a murder. He lifts him up, pins him against a cabinet door with the knife still through his chest, and leaves him hanging there like he's been mounted for display. Feet off the ground, arms loose, positioned, not discarded. Then Michael tilts his head, slow and almost curious, and just looks at what he made. He's not checking whether Bob is dead. He's admiring the composition. Then it gets worse, and it gets worse in a way that's almost funny if you let it be. Michael takes the glasses off Bob's face. He pulls the white sheet off the bed. And he puts the whole getup on, standing in the doorway like a kid at a costume party so he can quietly watch Linda through the eye holes of his own kill. Sit with that for a second. He didn't need a disguise. There was nobody left in that house who could stop him or even see him coming. He wore it anyway for no audience but himself. This is the same 6-year-old who stabbed his sister and just stood there holding the knife, all grown up into something that now stages the aftermath for an audience of one. The stillness from that first kill never went anywhere. It just learned presentation. Bob doesn't simply die, he gets turned into scenery, a prop Michael can walk past, dress up as, and use as a punchline nobody else in the house is in on. Linda has no idea her boyfriend is hanging in the next room, and even less idea that the ghost watching her sleep is wearing his glasses. Fans have argued for decades that this is the single kill that defines Michael best. Not the body count later films rack up, not the increasingly elaborate methods the sequels dream up, just one thrust and a joke only he finds funny. It's brute strength with a punchline attached, and that exact combination is why Bob's death still gets pointed to as the platonic ideal of a Michael Myers murder. But staging a body is one thing, it still needs a victim to notice something's wrong. The next kill doesn't work like that. It happens close enough for someone to hear every single second of it, and that someone has no idea what she's actually listening to until it's far too late to do anything but keep talking. Annie and Linda. The scariest sound in this entire franchise is not a scream. It is heavy breathing on a phone line, because that is the exact moment Laurie Strode starts listening to her friend die and thinks it is a joke. Annie Brackett gets the slower death first, and it starts before she even realizes she is not alone. She climbs into her car outside the Wallace house, and Michael is already in the back seat, waiting like he has nowhere else to be and nowhere else to go. He grabs her, chokes her, and for a second it genuinely looks like she might win. She fights, she claws at his arms, she buys herself a few extra seconds that feel like they might actually matter. They do not matter. Michael finishes the strangling right there in the driver's seat, pinning her against the wheel, then pulls a blade across her throat while she is still trapped behind it. There is no cutaway here. There is no mercy edit to spare the audience. The camera simply stays, and it stays long enough that you cannot pretend you did not see it. That is the part that lands wrong in most people's memory. A lot of viewers swear Annie gets out of the car, stumbles toward the house, almost makes it home before something catches her. She does not do any of that. Michael kills her exactly where he caught her, in the driver's seat, on screen, in full view. The only thing that happens afterward is what he decides to do with the body once she is gone. Linda van der Klok goes next, and her death flips the entire formula. Michael does not reach for a knife this time. He wraps a telephone cord around her neck while she is mid-conversation with Laurie, mocking her boyfriend, laughing about absolutely nothing important. The line goes quiet for a moment, then it does not stay quiet, and Laurie hears choking and rattling breaths that she assumes is just Linda clowning around on the other end. Zero warning, zero context. Just a friend's murder delivered directly into Laurie's ear, disguised the entire time as a prank call. That single phone call is the moment Laurie's entire future gets written in real time. She spends the next 4 decades treating every locked door and every quiet room like it might be hiding that exact same sound. Then Michael does something he has never done before in this entire night. He does not just leave bodies where they fall anymore, he builds a display out of them. Annie is arranged on the bed with Judith's stolen headstone positioned behind her like an altarpiece, the same body Laurie watched him finish off minutes earlier, now repurposed into set dressing. Linda is folded into a closet like something being stored. Bob hangs framed in a doorway wearing a bedsheet and glasses styled like a sick punchline, waiting for someone to walk in on it. Laurie walks through all 3 in a matter of seconds, and the horror stacks on top of itself in real time. This is the turn that changes what kind of killer he actually is. It is not just a body count anymore, it is curation. Every piece pulled into orbit around one stolen grave marker, the same one from a killing floor decades earlier. He is not improvising anymore, he is composing, and the signature keeps getting bolder every single time he stages a new frame. Everything so far happened in cozy suburban bedrooms and kitchens, but when the hunt moves into a place built to save lives, the bodies stop being displayed and start disappearing into the walls. Jack Sayer. Nobody in Haddonfield Memorial Hospital ever sees the moment Jack Sayer dies. That's not an accident. That's the whole point of how this one plays out, and it's worth sitting with before we even get to the body. Jack works the night shift as a security guard, which is the kind of job that exists specifically because somebody, somewhere, assumed nothing would ever happen on it. He's not a babysitter. He's not connected to Laurie by blood, by friendship, or even by a real conversation they once had. He's just a guy doing his rounds in a building where she happens to be recovering that night, and it turns out that's more than enough to get him killed. By this point in the story, Michael has already turned a quiet suburban street into something closer to a gallery, arranging bodies for Laurie to stumble across like exhibits built for one specific viewer. Jack proves something colder than any of that, and Michael doesn't need an audience anymore. He doesn't need Laurie to find this particular body, and he doesn't need anyone to find it quickly either. All he needs is the room and the time and nobody watching. That alone marks a shift in what Michael's kills are even for. Michael tracks Jack through the hospital's service corridors, through the boiler rooms and storage areas that nobody on staff ever bothers to check twice in a single shift. 0 staff notice him moving through their own building. 0 alarms go off anywhere. He kills Jack somewhere deep in that maze, entirely off camera, and the film only shows you what's left behind afterward. A body that's been bludgeoned and impaled, damage that lines up with a hammer or some other blunt tool grabbed straight off a shelf. The movie never gives you the swing itself. It only ever gives you the wreckage, and that choice says a lot about what this sequel is actually trying to do to you. That's a real shift away from the original film's whole approach to violence. Halloween, one puts you right on the knife the entire time, every stab visible, every reaction shot lingering just long enough to hurt. Halloween 2 takes that away from you completely and hands you the aftermath instead, and somehow that ends up worse. Your brain fills in the gap Michael left behind on its own, and it never fills that gap in gently. Jack matters mostly because of who he isn't. Kill lists across the franchise go out of their way to separate him from the nurses and doctors dying around him in the same stretch of film, and that distinction alone tells you something the filmmakers clearly wanted understood. He's not collateral damage in a bigger plot about family secrets. He's not tied to Laurie's babysitting circle from the first movie, not even loosely. He's simply a man doing a boring job in the wrong building at the wrong hour, and Michael erases him with the exact same total indifference he'd show a blood relative. Hospitals exist for one basic reason, which is keeping people alive. Michael walks into one and quietly proves he can flip that purpose into its opposite, one hallway at a time, and he does it before the woman he's actually hunting even realizes he's under the same roof as her. Laurie is upstairs recovering from a night that already gutted her, still clinging to the idea that a building full of staff and locked doors might finally count as safe. Jack's death is the first crack in that idea, and she doesn't even know it's happened yet. Nobody tells her. Nobody can. For 40 years, people believed you could out-prepare him. Enough locks, enough planning, enough distance, and the pattern would finally break somewhere down the line. The next kill happens on a property built for exactly that kind of preparation, and it dies in the yard within minutes. Ray Barnes. 40 years of planning, and the fortress falls before anyone even gets a chance to use the panic room. Laurie Strode built her compound like she was preparing for war, because she was. Motion lights, reinforced doors, a basement bunker, guns hidden in the walls. Every inch of that property exists to do exactly one thing: keep Michael Myers out. Meanwhile, Ray Nelson just wanted to know why the outside lights kept tripping. Ray is Karen Nelson's husband, which makes him Laurie's son-in-law, and by every measure that matters to Michael, a total stranger. He never babysat a Strode kid in 1978, he never carved a jack-o'-lantern near the wrong window. He married into this family, which should make him the least interesting target on the entire compound. Michael kills him anyway. The kill itself is almost insultingly simple. Ray steps outside to check on a noise because somebody always has to check on the noise, and Michael takes him down right there in the yard with a chain, wrapping it tight and finishing him off with his bare hands. No knife, no drawn-out struggle, no signature pose, just a fast, brutal strangulation, and then Michael leaves him exactly where he falls. Laurie spent 4 decades collecting tools to kill Michael with. He didn't even need any of them. He grabbed something off her own property and turned it into the murder weapon before anyone inside the house even knew he was there. His body gets left outside exposed, unmissed for just long enough to matter. That's the real damage. It's not a flashy kill meant to announce itself immediately, not a message written on a wall somewhere. It's a silent breach that says the perimeter is already gone, and nobody inside even knows it yet. Everyone in the house is still operating under the assumption that the walls work, right up until they don't. And this is where the invisible menace from the hospital corridors turns into something worse. That version of Michael exploited chaos, hid in plain sight among strangers who had no reason to look twice. This version walks onto a property engineered block by block to trap him, kills a man in the yard, and does it using whatever Laurie left lying around, like he's borrowing her own preparation just to dismantle it piece by piece. The compound was supposed to be the answer. Instead, it becomes just another structure with lights he can slip past, chains he can pick up, and yards he can cross, because Michael has never once needed the element of surprise to win. He just needs enough time and one person who decides to step outside. Fans tend to skate right past Ray. He's got maybe a handful of scenes, some deadpan family bickering, a little comic bumbling energy before the chain ever comes out. That abruptness isn't a flaw. It's the point. He's not a final girl, not a masked killer's rival, not anyone carrying narrative weight. He's a husband checking a noise, and Michael erases him in about 4 seconds flat, then leaves him in the yard like evidence nobody's bothered to read yet. Nobody gets a franchise-defining death scene for being collateral, because that's exactly what Ray is. Collateral in Laurie's war, a war he didn't start and barely understood the shape of. She spent 40 years turning her trauma into architecture, into locks and lights and hidden weapons, trying to build a version of safety strong enough to protect the people she loved. Ray dies in that exact yard, strangled with the very kind of gear she staged around the property to save her family. And it proves the horrible math sitting underneath the entire plan. You can prepare for the monster for 40 years and still lose the people standing right next to you the moment he shows up. If a compound built specifically to cage him can't hold for one Halloween night, the one place actually built for him, the one room that shaped him before any of this started, was never going to stand a chance. Big John, a man buys the most famous murder house in America, hangs some tasteful art on the walls, and thinks that makes it his. It doesn't. Big John and Little John moved into the old Myers place and did what nobody in 40 years had the nerve to try. They redecorated it, turned the address everyone in Haddonfield crossed the street to avoid into a genuinely nice home, complete with the kind of ironic knife-shaped decor that says we know exactly whose house this used to be, and we think that's funny. It is not funny to Michael. On Halloween night in 2018, with chaos already breaking out across town, Big John and Little John hear noise inside their own walls. Their first assumption is the obvious one. Some drunk teenager or true crime tourist has broken in to gawk at the house where it all started. They go to check it out like reasonable homeowners defending their property, because that is what reasonable homeowners do when something moves in the dark. What they don't understand yet is that the noise isn't an intruder disturbing their home. It's the original owner returning to one. Michael kills Big John inside the house, close and brutal, the kind of kill that doesn't need a weapon reveal or a lingering shot to land. No slow buildup, no music sting, just the fact of it. His body is left staged inside the same rooms, the couple filled with cheeky nods to the man who once bled through them. It's the most direct callback in the entire franchise, and it barely needs dialogue to make its point. The house that survived 4 decades of sequels, reboots, and real estate listings finally gets a body count again. And it's not a metaphor this time, it's a floor plan. Read it as Michael simply defending territory, and you're only getting half of it. Nothing in the film spells this out in a monologue, so take it as the pattern speaking rather than the script. But the staging does the talking that the dialogue won't. Big John and Little John didn't just live in a haunted house. They tried to own the myth, soften it, hang string lights on it. Michael's answer isn't rage, it's correction, because that's what every kill in this entire video has secretly been. Go back to a terrified teenager on the phone with her best friend, hearing her die in real time, and spending the next 40 years building alarm systems and trauma responses around a threat she could never fully explain to anyone, including herself. Go back to the 6-year-old in the clown mask, standing over his sister with a kitchen knife, silent, expressionless, offering no motive, because a motive would mean there was a reason, and a reason means someone could eventually talk him out of it, understand him, fix him. Every therapist who tried to explain him and walked away with nothing but notes and theories. Every sequel that tried to give him a sister, a cult, a curse, a mythology big enough to make sense of a 6-year-old's blank stare, and every one of those explanations eventually got quietly dropped or retconned away. Every fortress Laurie built believing preparation could outplan something that was never trying to win in the first place, only trying to finish what it started. None of it was ever about escaping or hunting or winning. Big John and Little John just made the mistake of thinking the house was theirs to reinterpret, theirs to make cute, theirs to sell as a punchline with a mortgage attached. Michael came home to remind them and everyone watching that some places don't get to be reclaimed, ironized, or turned into content. The house had to stay exactly as evil as it was the night he first proved what he was, and so did the town, and so did he. Redecorate all you want, hang the string lights, frame the knife art, tell the joke to your friends at dinner parties, the Foundation remembers. The last body in the Myers house isn't a victim of a slasher losing his edge or repeating himself for 40 years of sequels. It's the same 6-year-old still holding the knife, refusing to let the story become anything other than what it always was. 40 years of sequels, curses, cults, and cable news specials, and the story never actually moved an inch. He just waited for someone to forget that, and somebody always does. He was never trying to become a legend, he was just making sure nobody was allowed to rewrite one. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.